Okay, so today we're talking about reflexive verbs, and like you just saw, they kind of hinted to it a lot. I thought the video did a pretty good job explaining about how reflexive verbs, what they are. It's when a person does an action to themselves, or they're the only one involved in the action. So you saw a lot of, like one example was he woke up out of bed. So me despierto is I wake myself up. But on the other hand, he woke up somebody else, and doing that action to somebody else does not make it reflexive. It's only when you're the only one involved in it. He brushed his hair or brushed his teeth. You can shave your beard. But if you try shaving somebody else, it's not reflexive. Okay? So does that make sense? You do the action to yourself. You wash yourself. That's reflexive verbs. And this slide says, what do reflexive verbs require? They require a reflexive pronoun. What is a reflexive pronoun? That's these at the bottom. Me, te, se, nos, se. And you can identify these reflexive verbs by having, these are all the verbs with the se at the end. Aburrirse, cansarse, preocuparse, a lot of those that were on your verb quiz. Those are kind of like little blinking red lights saying, hey, I'm a reflexive verb. You need to do something special with me. And that means we're going to use these reflexive pronouns. These are going to agree with the subject of whoever's doing the action. All right, so I'm going to go to the next slide and show you exactly how we're going to conjugate this verb. Okay, so the first step that you need to know is you're going to drop off the se of aburrirse. And I think my X might be off a little bit. Sorry, the configuration got messed up. So the X should be over the se of aburrirse. All right, and if I want to conjugate it, let's say to the to form. To is your subject, and you're saying you are getting bored. We can do present tense here. You're going to change the se to agree with whatever the subject was. So our options from our pronouns were me, te, se, nos, or se. So the te is what we're going to use because it agrees with to. So I like to say we take off the se. It takes a little trip somewhere, and on its trip, it's going to change to agree with your subject. I think on the video he took it off and put it in his pocket. So you put it in your pocket, or it takes a little trip, and it's going to go to the front of the verb. So now you're left with te and aburrir. Okay, te and aburrir. But you're not done there, because aburrir is still in its infinitive form. So what you do is you just conjugate it just like a normal verb. So if I said the present tense, you drop off the IR and you add ES, because remember from Spanish 1, we had o, es, amos, or emos, in, or o, asa, amosan. It's just like a regular verb. Drop off the IR, add the ending. And then this can be done in any tense. So we learned the preterite last semester. You can say te aburriste if you got bored, or te aburres, you are getting bored. And the last step I say is to check your work. Okay, so we know that to is your subject, and so te agrees with to, and the es ending both agree with to. Okay. Here's some examples. With esconderse, this is the conjugation in all its forms. Notice we drop off the se, takes a little trip and goes right in the front. And we have me, te, se, nos, se. And then you drop off the er ending and conjugate it just like a normal er verb. Me escondo, te escondes, se esconde, nos escondemos, and then se esconden. Okay? Questions so far? We're going to do some practice here in just a little bit. I have one more slide to talk about before we do the practice. Sometimes you might want to use reflexive verbs as an infinitive form. In Spanish 1, we learned a couple of ways, like showing the simple future, ir plus a plus the infinitive. Like you want to say, I'm going to get bored. Or if you're showing an obligation with ik or tener que, you have to hide. If you're telling somebody, you have to hide. So you're going to conjugate the tener, but you do not do anything to its infinitive form. Let me show you. The only thing you have to do is just make the reflexive pronoun the same, agreeing with the subject. So if we're saying, I'm going to get bored in English class, Voy a aburrirme. Aburrir is the infinitive, so you just leave it alone. But you have to make the pronoun agree with who's ever's getting bored. Voy a aburrirme en inglés. De clase de inglés. Does that make sense? Where I got that? You don't have to change the verb itself, just the reflexive pronoun to show who is getting bored. Here's another example. You have to apologize to the teacher, and so it's basically saying you have to apologize for yourself, for whatever it is you did. Tienes que, the conjugated verb is tener, so you don't have to do anything to disculpar, except make the te agree with whoever's doing the apologizing. In this case, it's two. Yes, ma'am.
So how do you know the difference if you have to take it off and change it and put it at the front?
How do I know if I'm going to take it off and put it in the front?
Or keep it
like this. Okay, so if I'm using it in its infinitive form, like I don't want to conjugate the verb, like in these formulas. So, ir pasado was the infinitive. When it is the infinitive part, then you just leave it at the end and just make sure the pronoun agrees. And when you want to conjugate it and use it as your main verb of the sentence, like I'm getting bored in English class, then you will conjugate the whole thing. Put the me in front and make it me aburro en la clase de inglés. Okay, but here's I'm going to get bored. So the main verb is going. That's the conjugated verb. Just like here, you have to is the conjugated verb, and we're saying to apologize, so it's not needed to be conjugated, so it leaves on the end. Another example is one must bathe himself or herself after exercising. And if you notice, I didn't do anything to the verb bañarse. Why? I didn't even change the say. Well, there is no subject. Yeah, the IK is one must. There's no subject there. Or you would leave it the same if it was the he or she form. She must bathe herself after exercising. Ella tiene que bañarse. So we will be practicing with this a lot more later on. All right, let's do some examples. This is where I don't want you to cheat ahead on your slides that are in front of you. You can just move your page up just halfway, but the words in red don't show yourself. Okay. And here's your examples. I want you to work on these together. Notice two of them are stem changing, and we're just going to practice conjugating them in the present tense. So with mis amigos and sonreírse, notice it's E to I stem change. They're going to change the E to an I and then drop off the say, move it to the front, and then drop off the IR ending. So use your little pencil feature and write down your answers. You may type them as well, and then we'll discuss these answers if we have time. Okay.